peekaboo. I see you looking at me, looking at you. Hold up, where you going? What you doing? Who you seeing? What you need? What you want? I said, without you by my side, my side, my side. Without you by my side. One time from side to side. Without you by my side, I can't go outside. Without you by my side, I can't go outside. Without you by my side, I can't go outside. One time from side to side. walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for regrets. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Yeah. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Feel like a dynamite, ready to explode right up in the sky. I need you to listen, I need you to hear, and don't show any fear. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Yeah. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul.
week number 3. It's our first time that we're featuring a Group A matchup, and this matchup is actually going to be a battle for one of the top parts of the standings here, and we have Tilt Esports World Enders going up against Syndicate Coke, both teams with an undefeated series record and game record, but something has to give here in week 3. My name is Ferris. I'm here to show the world, and I'm with Ice Fireride on the desk. So Ice Fireride, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a new face to the Titan broadcast. How are you feeling ahead of this game?
I'm feeling really good. You know, it's always good to get on this side of the camera, put some words to video in a sense instead of words to paper, but words to video, talk about the game a bit and have a good time. This is going to be a really good matchup looking at the notes here between Syndicate Coke and TES. They're both 2-0. First versus fourth seed, which is an interesting standpoint that we do want to kind of poke and prod with, is they have something there that differentiates them, at least in the seeding of them. It'll be interesting to see how that comes out on the Rift. A lot of these names I recognize, having casted in other leagues, along with like Retail Row, Zed I recognize, Frozen Spud. So it's bound to be a really good matchup tonight.
I'm definitely excited for a good matchup. We might see 3 games this time around and see a whole bang out of a series and really see these teams clash for those coveted top positions. Now, one thing we can talk about here with these players is the fact that in the jungle, Chris, for the side of Tilt Esports World Enders, he's a carry player. He likes those carry junglers, pulls out the Viegos, the Canes, even the Heckrams previously in Conqueror League, while on the other side, Mist for Syndicate Coke has played 3 Viego games thus far. So this is a pick that might be contested here inside of this draft from both teams, whether they're just going to ban it away and say no Viego, or we're going to see maybe if blue side prioritizes that pick. And that could be a point of contention for these guys, and we'll see how those champion pools clash between them.
Absolutely. It's always good to see the different champion pools come together, what they decide to do, what comps they decide to draft. This is Emerald Elo, so I'm not expecting the super high level drafting that you come to expect out of like a Masters or a Diamond game. These are still players that are trying to learn about the game still, especially in a competitive sense. I want to see simple compositions that are easy to execute on and nothing that is going to have too many layers to it. What I like to do is, from my background as a coach, is look at compositions that are easy to execute, but they can always fall back to just the straight up 5v5 team fighting style, because that's the easiest way to operate at this EO, because it's going to devolve at some point to fighting around Dragon, fighting around Baron, and fighting around inhibs and Nexus turrets. If you cannot do those at a fundamental level, it's just you're gonna struggle to win these games, and you have to have a comp that is able to do so.
And a lot of the backbone of those intuitive front to back compositions that are just more natural to play are carry marksman champions. And for the side of Solo Mason, this guy really likes to play the Jinx. Had some really good performances on Jinx. So if that is your key to success, Ice Fireride, I would see Syndicate Coke going towards that pick. And on the other side, actually, never mind, it is KTL that is going to be starting here for TES. There was another player that was playing the Aphelios, but even the Ezreal that KTL has pulled out is another champion that functions nicely there, has some safety, and KTL also had some good performances on that one as well. Kakolin likes to play the Enchanters. There's been some Janna, some Milio. I think I even saw a Karma in that player's pool. So I think, to your point there about those team compositions that are very team fight oriented, front to back, you have tanks in the front, you have your carry in the back. This is probably something that we're going to see coming from both of these teams, just because we've seen it in their previous matches that they have had, and they've had some very high success with it as well.
Absolutely. You mentioned the Ezreal as being one of KTL's more prominent picks there as we are getting into draft. We'll have to see if that gets through, as Ezreal is one of these champions that is very, very hard to actually push out of lane, even with a Jinx. Jinx doesn't really come online till that 20-25 minute mark once they hit those 2 items and can start to snowball through those fights. But already we're flying through this draft phase. Seraphine, and right there, you were talking about there being a prevalent Jinx player. That's taken off the board. They're not allowed to play that champion, and that is a very smart ban coming out of the red side.
And we're going to see the mages here denied from Zed. Zed's played 2 games of Syndra. The Seraphine was also pulled out as well for a 6-0 performance previously. So from the side of Tilt Esports World Enders, they have been doing their research and they know, or actually, sorry, from Syndicate Coke, they've been doing their research and they know what the other team plays. There's the Ezreal we were talking about as well. And the Yone, very strong still on 1420, has been taking over the World's Patch, got buffs on 1419. That is something they don't want to deal with. And the last one to follow it up is the Jarvan.
Yeah, and you saw very strong power picks taken off. I always like to say Syndra is like the ultimate outplay with her ultimate outplay button of her ultimate. And then having that taken off the board along with the Jarvan, you've taken off easy damage and easy entry into fights. Very smart by both of these teams. And it's going to be a trade of mid laners to start off the bat with a Hui and Orianna. Really a very much a mid lane neutralizer of sorts for both of these champions. They like to sit back, Orianna with her ball, Hui with his abilities that I don't even know what half of them really combination are for them, because there are many of them. But with that, I mean, you have these 2 mid laners that want to sit back, so it's going to be up to these junglers now with the Viego and then Ornn being picked up very early on. Very surprising, but I guess they want to get that. They're going straight and heavy team fighting. I'm looking to see a jungle heal here for Trad, because they need to match the Viego. Instead, they're going to go for the Caitlyn. Not a bad pick. It's going to be a little bit harder now for them if more supports are banned away. If they have like the Karma, the Lux, if those aren't able to get with the Caitlyn, it's going to be very difficult. Caitlyn wants to play aggressive in lane, and if she can't do that, her mid lane trough is really aggressive, and she won't be able to keep up in damage. As you can already see, that Lux is taken off the board.
And on top of the fact that her key synergies will be taken away now, you see the Caitlyn, you think about Lux, you think about Morgana. There's also a lot of lanes that Caitlyn doesn't like to play against. Ezreal's taken away, so that's an iffy matchup there for Caitlyn. But just ranged champions in general that can poke her out, that champions she can't abuse as well. We've already seen Okarma come through from Kakalin, and that is a champion that Caitlyn wouldn't really like to play against. So the blind picks here are very ambitious from Syndicate Coke. And here is the Viego locked in that we talked about before the draft started, and this is going to be Chris has the comfort, has played the Viego before, denying it away from Trad, who played 3 games of that earlier, and the Camille as well can dive onto this Caitlyn now and is a good counter pick into the Ornn. So right now in the draft, I would say that Tilt Esports, with the 2 blind picks that Syndicate Coke sort of gifted to Tilt, they were able to counter those quite nicely, and the Aphelios for KTL is going to go through into the Caitlyn. We'll see what that support pairing will be into Renata Glass.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Renata here, I'll be honest. It doesn't have the same value in lane that a Caitlyn needs in order to play aggressive, especially into the likes of an Aphelios. And I'm going to assume to be a safety-oriented support here. Yeah, and there it is. There's the Thresh. I mean, this is a very safe duo in the bot lane, and the Caitlyn Renata is really going to struggle into that. And so I worry about the side of Sync and whether or not they're actually going to be able to aggress in that lane the way that they need to. Hui is going to need Xin Zhao's help, or Ornn is going to need Xin Zhao's help. Like, every lane needs Xin Zhao in order to win out, and Xin Zhao can't be everywhere at once, so it's going to be very difficult for them to really get into the places that they need to in order to win out. And then looking on the other side for TES, it's not a stock standard composition. There is some layers to it, but they're not hard layers to execute upon. You have Weatherneck jumping into the back line and pushing everybody away as they get onto that Caitlyn. As long as they can avoid out that Renata ultimate or the mini revive of sorts that you can get from the Renata, as long as Caitlyn doesn't get any of that, they really don't have damage outside of the way, and it's just very easy for the Camille to get onto all of them. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
I definitely do think, and we'll see what ProComps thinks about this, but I do think that TES is the team that has come out on top in the draft. They have the winning mid lane, or at least the mid lane with the push. They have Camille into Ornn. That's a matchup that people very much enjoy. It really is just about getting this Aphelios to a point where he's happy, and that is 2-3 items. He can struggle against a champion like Caitlyn, but you already touched on the fact that Caitlyn Renata not as oppressive as something like a Caitlyn Lux would be, a Caitlyn Karma would be, Caitlyn Morgana even. So this is pretty good for them, but it actually goes the way of Syndicate Coke. So we, or at least I guess, am going to have a boxing match here with Syndicate Coke over who's right, who's wrong. But just kidding. I won't actually have to have that boxing match because we'll see who ends up winning the game, who ends up having the successes as we are now underway. This is week 3, Group A of the Titan Conqueror League, Syndicate Coke versus Tilt Esports World Enders.
And we're getting a very basic stock standard start to the game. No invades, nothing crazy coming out, as it's just going to be a lot of farming until we get to like 2.5 clears of the jungle and they can start pushing into it and making some plays happen there in the lanes. They need items out of these junglers to really be making differences, as Weatherneck just needs levels. That's all they need. This is going to be very expected early on, but Ornn has to be careful once that Triforce comes online for Camille, because there's not going to be much that Ornn's going to be able to do to stand up in that lane. So it's going to be very difficult for them. In the bot side, it's going to be Aphelios. Once they get their first couple of components, that's when they're going to start to be able to control the wave a bit better and stop this Caitlyn pushing in. And for what Caitlyn has to do right now, it's all about getting as many plates as possible before that happens, as well as staying safe. If you get caught out by a Viego gank and die early and Aphelios gets some gold under his belt, it's going to be very, very difficult for Caitlyn to come out of that in a good set for the mid and late game. Now, of course, the later on the game gets, it's going to be easier for the Caitlyn, but overall, it's still going to be very difficult for them to get to that point if Aphelios starts to scale up faster.
And we can see both junglers have path towards the bot lane. You said 2.5 clears. We'll see if they complete their clears. Maybe they fight over this Scuttle Crab, but it's Chris that's here first and should be able to grab this one, although it is priority right now for Syndicate Coke's bot lane. And it looks like should have the damage there, even without the smite. The recall is being channeled here for Mist. We might not actually see any action, but the Caitlyn is very vulnerable with the death sentence, with the fact that when they're pushed up, Viego has an easier time finding those ganks. And that will be the detriment of the Caitlyn if that happens to exactly what you mentioned here. So for the moment, we see both junglers resetting now as see death sentence lands, but not really going to be what they want there in the 2v2. Just going to take it easy, as Ornn should be beating the hell out of Camille for the first couple levels until, like you said, that Trinity Force comes online.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit for that to happen. I'm looking at the 10 to 15 minute mark before Camille can really start taking over this lane, but Chris waffling a little bit here. I'm not a fan of this happening. I wish they would have pushed up a little bit, grabbed some vision, or you know, put down something to find out where Mist is if they're gonna be on this top side, because you assume since they didn't take bot scuttle, right, you know that they're gonna be going for top scuttle early, so you assume they did an early recall to get there. They're gonna beat you there, and just by sitting there, you're gonna struggle a little bit, as Weatherneck's taken down to 250 health, but isn't really worried about it too much, as Fourth Espada just has to run away after they expend their entire kit onto Weatherneck.
And it kind of sucks right now for Weatherneck because that wave is pushing away from him. So might have to utilize the teleport to get back. And looks like the recall is being channeled. They need that full HP. But Fourth Espada says, hey man, I'm happy with that. But let's take a look at the bot lane. Solo Mason flash burn immediately. Does Catcallan have the death sentence? He does not, but he will take the first blood. And that will be Tilt Esports World Enders bot lane getting things done. And they can transition to an Ocean Drake potentially for Chris.
I mean, good first blood. Only downside is it went to Thresh. But that's exactly what the Renata and the Caitlyn had to be wary of. And they played right into the hands of KTL and Catcallan. And that's going to equal an early Ocean Dragon for the side of TES. It's going to help out the Camille. It's going to help out the Orianna. Just this entire team is going to get a huge boon off of this. And then if you look at the timings of everything, Grubs haven't spawned yet. The traditional trade right now is Grubs for first dragon. Whoever takes first dragon, the other team's going to take Grubs. But because Dragon was taken so early off of that first blood, it gives time for the Viego to actually transition up to that top side potentially along with the Thresh. I would like to see the Thresh make that roam up for first grub since you don't have to worry about the Dragon. Just let Aphelios play safe down bot. You might give up a turret plate or two, but if you get those grubs, it's just a huge boon to helping out your siege potential against this Caitlyn and Hui that's going to be difficult to siege into them with.
And it would certainly be nice to have those grubs on the Camille, but no summoners here on Solo Mason. They just walked right into the trap that Tilt Esports set. Give the kill to Chris. That's exactly what you want. And they said, hey, no sums. They might just walk right into us. That's exactly what happened there. Grubs will be the trade, but still devastating for Syndicate Coke.
Yeah, that is big devastation, as not only does the kill go over to Chris in the jungle, it is also a lot of wave pressure lost in the bot lane. You're missing out on a lot of CS. The wave is pushing, luckily it's going to be pushing back into you as KTL cleared out the remnants of the last wave. So you're a little bit lucky in that standpoint, but overall, you lost out on so much pressure there that now it's going to be even harder for you to really come back in as the Caitlyn and be able to dish out the damage that you need to dish out.
Chris will be spotted on this ward. Fourth is spotted. We'll know he's here. And this is Tilt Esports game right now. They have a small gold lead. They are keeping their Aphelios protected in the bot side. Things are going nice for them. The Camille's down 10 or so CS, but that gold gap should be able to be bridged once the Camille starts to get a couple more items. So they're actually quite happy with the way that this game is going right now. I honestly expect to see, with the summoners slowly coming back up from the bot lane of Syndicate Coke, a slower paced game until we get those next neutral objectives. Because right now, Chris is happy to farm it out. Weatherneck's happy to farm it out. They scale extraordinarily hard. So honestly, the pressure right now a little bit on the side of Syndicate Coke to sort of get some things going here with this Caitlyn. Otherwise, it's going to be a really tough game for them going forward. As we're going to see, Call of the Forge God here from Fourth Espada. You might have heard me here on the broadcast. The Searing Charge as well will land the knockup, the hook shot, the flash, the Bellows Breath. It's not enough. Weatherneck, by the hairs on his Weatherneck, has escaped from this 1v1.
Big plays there. Fourth Espada is doing everything they can to keep this Camille down because they know that they're going to be outmatched very soon, and they have to be very careful about that, as Kakalin's actually looking for another hook, and I love this play from the support, and it does. Oh, it lands.
It lands. Red, white, not a lot of range, though, and they decide not to go all in.
I think that's a smart play not to go all in on that. I mean, Caitlyn is still devastating with that pickaxe, double longsword. The 90 caliber net, if it landed, would be huge. And for KTL, they're going for a little bit more of the early damage build with the lethality pickup. So it'll be interesting to see what their second item is. But I like what TES is doing. They're saying, we don't need the top side. I'm hoping they contest second grubs. But they know that Camille's going to win eventually. The Orianna doesn't have to worry too much later, through the middle stages of this game, as long as they aren't caught out by Hui in a bad position. So it's just up to Aphelios to get ahead and stay ahead. So that's why instead of electing to go topside, they elected to just go right back down bot, push this Caitlyn farther down, and make sure Aphelios is set up so that Caitlyn can't do anything in the mid game. As we're going to actually see a potential 2v2 here in the mid lane here, as
Zed takes a lot of damage. Retail Row gets that combination down. Can't quite find that last shot. Zed is pretty low in the mid lane. I'm consistently worried about Weatherneck's positioning around that wave. It seems like he's always in a gank spot, but let's see what Chris can pull off here. As there's the grab and a Moonlight Vigil. That's going to find the root. The hostile takeover will come through, but Solo Mason will drop into the bailout. They go. Kakalin gets that kill, but nonetheless, you should be able to deny some CS here. But will the play continue? Frozen Spud, certainly you have to get out of this one. No ultimate available, no bailout available. And that is big plays in the bot lane once again for Tilt Esports.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm gonna gripe. As a former support player myself, I'm still gonna gripe that Thresh is getting the kills, because Thresh with gold isn't as valuable as Aphelios with gold, and Aphelios desperately needs that gold. Yes, you're denying CS to the Caitlyn. Yes, you're denying XP to that Caitlyn. But you had 2 players that could grab that kill, and instead it went to Kakalin, and it just feels so bad. Now, you're going to see the rotates top of
This should
Thresh.
just be a kill. Flash available for Retail Row, but there is the Heartbreaker. The follow-up is good. Nice stun. Might actually be able to walk his way out of this one. Has to lose the Flash. But that's a good escape here from Retail Row. But what does this mean for the 3v3 around this next pair of grubs? The teleport not available for the Hui. They're going to start it off with the Call of the Forge God here as well. Crescent Guard used. That's going to be Chris taken off the map. And the Searing charge is massive. Plus the handshake. The combination from Syndicate Coke around the grubs is massive. Wind becomes lightning. Will get the double kill for the Xin Zhao. That's 3 in the bank. And Syndicate Coke are rolling after this.
Yeah, and that was devastation for TES. The strong side middle with the Xin Zhao, the Renata roaming up off of the play bot side. Just once you got Retail Row to go under tower, you needed to play a lot safer because they know where everybody is. Ornn wasn't showing in. Ornn was in lane, but hovering down bot. So you had to know with second grubs up that there's going to be a play made by Sync up there, and you had to play accordingly. Instead, they walked in and Shockwave was not available. Okay, it looked like it was available, but it looked like it was just a UI bug during that fight. So it was not available till the last split seconds of it. So, I mean, just overall, you're fighting without key ultimates. For this, if you made a play onto Retail Row, you cannot go farther in on that if you don't have vision. You have to take a much safer route in order to do so. And so they baited out that fight and they paid the price for it. And now, 1, they lost the gold lead. 2, Xin Zhao is doing really well. And that's the one counter that can keep Caitlyn in this, because they can keep Caitlyn alive in a sense by pushing the Aphelios back and everybody. Here's a return gank.
Remember, no flash, Shockwave, Heartbreaker. Excellent punish from the earlier play that they made in sort of remedying the mistake. But it seemed like misplaced confidence in that previous fight from Tilt Esports. They didn't have the abilities, like you said, or the summoner spells. But let's look at Mist gank here. KTL does have flash. Kakalin does not. It looks like the Thresh will be the easy target here, but Mist takes a ton of damage. Fortunately, has the Crescent Guard to bail him out, and the hostile takeover will hit the Aphelios here. Solo Mason picks up that kill, and a successful gank here for Syndicate Coke, and they are continuing to grab momentum off of that fight that they won up topside.
Yeah, really, really good job by the Xin Zhao. You can see they already have the Eclipse completed. They're playing really well right now around their weaker lanes, making sure that they are picking up the gold where they need to and making the plays that they need to make in order to keep their team in this. And actually, they're still technically ahead off of those plays. So really well done to the side of Sync, to especially Mist, to make this happen. And if we could get a quick toggle of the gold from our observer, that would be great, because I want to see what the difference is in the gold of the junglers and of the ADC right now. So it's 100 gold towards the Viego, but off of that one gank, what was a 300 gold Aphelios lead is now 300 in favor of the Caitlyn.
Fourth, Espada's in trouble now. Does use the flash to try and get himself out of this one. A follow-up flash from Weatherneck. They're trying to get the damage off, but the Ornn is too tanky. He just takes it all. He soaks it all, and the gank is not going to work here from Tilt Esports. Let's look at what's happening around the mid lane right now. As Frozen Spuds and Solo Mason, the bot lane duo, they're looking for a gank, but right now Chris is getting beat up inside of the river and has to use the Heartbreaker to get over the wall away near the Rift Herald. So control of the rivers right now for Syndicate Coke.
No, really, really well done for Syndicate Coke. They're running the map the way they absolutely have to do in order to make sure that they can stay even / ahead of these stronger lanes that TES currently has. But remember, Syndicate Coke is on a timer. They have a Caitlyn timer that they have to be very, very wary of, because anytime they get, once they start pressuring these side lanes, it's going to be very difficult for them to make major plays without losing a lot on the other side, because Caitlyn is the newfangled Fiora. The amount of damage that Camille can do to turrets is absolutely insane, and Zed's actually very low. has to be very careful from Retail Row and their artillery barrage that they can throw out.
Chris gets forced out of the river for this. The constant pressure that Retail Row is able to apply here is giving lots of control around these neutral objectives for Syndicate Coke. And for this, they should be able to pick up this Chemtech Drake. Now, the teleport is not available for Zed, and it doesn't look like Chris now clearing away at the Gromp, but they want to go for this. They don't feel that they're strong enough, and so what they had 2 dragons here, but now the stacking is going to begin from the side of Syndicate Coke. They get the first tower from Retail Row. They have now amassed a 2.5k gold lead. The top lane has been going swimmingly for them as well. We talked about the Camille scaling, but the Ornn for the moment has been doing quite the good job of keeping her at sort of a deficit in the gold department for the 16-minute mark. And honestly, if Fourth Espada can just survive in these side lanes and hold the Camille, that might be enough based on the way the rest of the map has going here for Syndicate Coke.
And they're doing an excellent job. Chris has to now put some time towards Weatherneck here to try and get Weatherneck ahead. They need to speed up this Camille because they're starting to lose in the mid, lose in the bot side. They've already lost mid turret. And that's going to be really rough for the side of TES. And with it being a Chemtech Soul, this is something that Camille is absolutely going to love. Is Weatherneck's going to go in here. This could be a very good gank for them.
Doesn't have flash this time to get himself out. He is very tanky though and does a good amount of damage. Nice usage of the Hextech ultimatum to cancel out the Bell's Breath, but this should just be the kill with the Call of the Forge God, but an excellent stun will prevent the Ornn from getting the R2, and the kill goes to Chris with the Heartbreaker, and finally Tilt Esports have something going their way topside.
That is exactly what they needed. Unfortunately, again, Chris picking up the kill, but a good play back.
Forward. It's going to be a massive hostile takeover. That Frozen Spuds is actually going to flash forward here. The Ignite is ticking, but here is the TP from Retail Row taking a ton of damage. The Death Sentence will go wide, but flashing forward is KTL with the Crescendum. Those Chakrams doing so well to give him the damage he needs to finish off the kill. Now Frozen Spuds, ace in the hole onto Zed, will deal a little bit of damage. They're very low here. I don't know if they have enough in the tank. Solo Mason just burns the barrier out of nowhere. You definitely can't defend this tower now, and this will be a positive play for Tilt in the bot side, and they are happy about that across the map.
That was a huge cross map play for the side of TES that one swung the gold closer in favor of them once again, but two, the amount of pressure that they got out of that. They've now opened Camille up for this top side. Viego gets the Rift Herald off of the gank top side, and then I mean Kakalin is playing out of their mind. This is reminiscent of my first ever game on Thresh, which is an autofill support game that I was like, I guess I played Thresh here back in like 2014 or something like that. And just they're landing every single hook, and here's another one.
You can't walk up to this, man. I mean, Weatherneck might die for this, but drops the Tower Anchor with the Hextech ultimatum. That was gorgeous. Excellent work. Chris has to flash away from this one, but does have the reset now that the tower is down. Frozen Spuds is their target, but here is Fourth Espada with the teleport. Call of the Forge God still on cooldown, so they don't have what it takes to close the gap there. And that's Solo Mason getting too greedy under the tower, not knowing where the rest of Tilt Esports was.
Heartbreak or Sync right now, as just everything that they are trying to do is falling apart, right? They try to defend top tower, it fails. The TP by Retail Row and the bot side hands over gold to KTL, who is now 1-0-3, has that collector finish, and is feeling really strong right now. And you can see where Caitlyn is starting to wane in her power and unable to do as much. Zed is down there just to keep that wave pushed, right? It's like all they need to do right now is just keep waves away from their tower and keep the pressure on Syndicate Coke. As long as they do that, they're in a really good spot, because anytime that Fourth Espada now has to roam for a fight, Weatherneck's just going to start taking turrets. There's only one turret left, and Chris, I want to see Chris and the rest of TES start to make a play for this mid lane turret with that Herald. Drop that, and the map is so much more open for you to make some massive plays.
Well, they already have 2 Drakes, so that third Drake that they might be able to acquire. I mean, this Herald placement, though, hasn't been great so far. It looks like Solo Mason's going to get some free hits down. Chris has to push the wave, but this should just be no value gotten from the Herald. So this has been a big blunder here from the side of Tilt Esports. Maybe if it was summoned now, it would have been a little better, but not a single charge. They get control of the river, but this is not really what you want. The turret in the top lane is destroyed, and we are sort of building up the tension between these two teams around the next dragon, which is going to be that Chemtech dragon once again, as it is a Chemtech soul in this game. It's coming up in 15 seconds. Fourth Espada making the roam down. The teleport used from Weatherneck as well. They're waiting inside of this brush, but they're going to be spotted out there with the ace in the hole. The death sentence goes wide. We'll see how this plays out around the Drake.
Weatherneck coming down early instead of forcing the Ornn back more and potentially pulling players there. So I'm very interested because they have the teleport advantage. I'm just surprised that they blew it in that sense, but Weatherneck is now just looking on the side.
Oh, that's a massive shockwave. It's onto two carries. The Hextech, or the Renata ultimate, is going to go through. Weatherneck is into the backline. Retail Row is very low. Zed's actually going to flash right forward into the backline, but there's no one there to help him out. The bailout will be good for Retail Row. All the meanwhile, Fourth Espada was tanking up for days in the backline of TES. This has been a 2-for-0 thus far for Syndicate Co. Chris is still very healthy, though, and does not have the Heartbreaker, so this will be definitely difficult for him to pilot this fight without that ultimate ability in his hands, but they feel the confidence. 5 versus 3. The teleport is good from Retail Row. This is definitely not a fight they can take anymore. They are going to back away from that. And what a fight from the side of Syndicate Coke. That is big for them.
Yeah, I'm very confused about the fight that TES took and how they took it. One, the early TP from Weatherneck I think was unnecessary from a macro sense because you had TP advantage over Fourth Espada. So if you're pushing there, someone has to go match. They don't have TP, allowing you to then TP into the fight later on, giving you advantage over. But instead, they go for that play. It doesn't work as there's a flash from Kakalin.
Is that the Forbidden Thresh combo that we have seen here? I think that is what we just witnessed here today on the Thresh, but let's give Kakalin a break. He's been pretty good this game. That play wasn't quite it, but let's see what Retail Row has to say in response. They know now that the Thresh does not have the flash. All he can really do is put a little bit of damage. But for the moment, the lane assignments, they're pretty good for Tilt Esports. They know they need Weatherneck in the side lane. Still need some gold injected into that Camille. Zed can easily push out the side lanes. Not the champion, but the player who is playing Orianna. And Orianna is a mage that does function nicely around the side lanes, has good wave clear, and pretty solid in the 1 versus 1 as well against that Hui. So they are able to, despite losing in that previous fight, stall this game out quite nicely. And the more they stall, the happier they are going to be. We've talked about this a whole bunch, but it's going to need to be even more pressure applied from the side of Syndicate Coke, and they have to start making plays away from neutral objectives as well and get a little bit more proactive with their play if they want to have their benefits maximized.
Yeah, it's I'm at a loss for the way that they're playing, as Chris is now having to flash away.
He is. The ultimate won't deal enough. That's a good start, though. Burning the flash off the jungler is a nice way to begin your proactive play if you're Syndicate Coke.
Yeah, and this is how you make up for the trough that Caitlyn has, is you just keep the pressure on and take fights in your favor and force mistakes from the enemy squad. And that's exactly what they're doing. With this minion wave now crashing into mid turret, I don't think they can take this turret as actually, yeah, they just can because it's going to be given up here. Chris isn't going in, Zed's not there, so that's just a free turret. And yeah, I mean, this is just a big blunder macro-wise from TES, and a capitalization on the blunder by Syndicate Coke to make these plays happen. And it all started around that dragon fight. Everything from that dragon fight forward is because of that fight.
They were just late to that rotation. They didn't have Zed, like you mentioned. They didn't have Weatherneck. And tier 2 turrets, they're valuable stuff. 700 gold, that is going to be huge for Syndicate Coke. They now sit at a comfortable roughly 3,000 gold lead for themselves. So they're happy with that. There's more standing gold on the map for them to take. I wonder what their play is now that that tier 2 in the mid lane is gone. If they're going to rotate themselves towards the side lane, maybe get some 4-1 action here with Fourth Espada just holding Weatherneck. But I honestly think, even with the Trinity Force completed for Weatherneck, Fourth Espada is a level ahead, has the Randuins, has the Heartsteel, Bramble Vest as well for the healing reduction. This Ornn is nothing to take lightly, and I still think is going to be able to beat out this Camille in the 1v1. So that's the added plus right now, is this Camille isn't really at the point that she wants yet. She's not 2 items. You can still leverage this Ornn in the side lane. So we'll see how they play and position their players around the map here, because they can really do some damage here if they play the map correctly.
And it's good for the Ornn, right? Because now you have matching TPs for everybody on the side of Syndicate Coke.
Solo Mason, that's going to be a flash burned, and Chris will take the lantern. It was close, and a nice one for TES to grab that flash off the enemy AD carry.
Yeah, that was a definite necessary force there, that now they need to utilize that. They need to force something that puts Solo Mason in a bad position they cannot get out of with the 90 caliber net. That's the big difference now. Is Caitlyn is now pretty much a squishy, mostly immobile ADC at this point without the flash. They have the 90 caliber net, but it doesn't give the same space that they need if they also had the flash at the same time. You can see they're pushing in the mid wave. They're going down the checklist of prepping for Dragon, and they're doing it well. It's up to TES now to make the play with Weatherneck on the flank unspotted that will win them the fight. It's not going to be easy though, as this is now littered with control wards, and they're just walking this mini wave to the inhibitor turret exactly like they should.
Weatherneck is looking for that flank. Right now it's red-white guns for KTL, and usually you say red-white ready to fight. But I have a hard time believing that red-white is optimal here in this game against a Hui, against Caitlyn, against a Renata who can use hostile takeover, so you can use that red and white gun against your own teammates here. You might want a longer range weapon like the Caliber, but let's see how this fight kicks off here. Call of the Forge God's going to go wide. Hostile takeover is going to go wide. Lantern going to be taken by Zed on the Orianna. That's a great start to the fight. If you are Tilt Esports, you have expended absolutely nothing to get out of that engage. This is their fight to win now, as Retail Row also going to have to burn the flash to get away from the death sentence. Weatherneck is not going to pull the trigger just yet, but Chris is locked up here with the Searing Charge, and Mist thinks it's his time to go right in as the Heartbreaker used, but it's not enough to buy the distance to keep himself alive as the solo kill from Retail Row on the other side of the fight comes through. The artillery does some damage, and they burn all their ultimates, but still Syndicate Coke put them in the dirt.
Yeah, I mean, I was very worried about that fight after every single ult that was expended in that initial engagement was whiffed completely by the side of Syndicate Coke, but they were able to bring it back, fight on their terms. Chris, out in no man's land, came in to 3 players because Weatherneck just dipped on them, and then, yeah, it was just a really bad fight from TES. They are absolutely just collapsing from what they had a good lead at the start of the mid stage of the early game. They had a really decent lead that they could utilize to get through the mid and late stages of the game if they worked it properly. Instead, they fumbled the bag, and now they're on the back foot heavily. This Camille isn't where they need to be. The Viego isn't where they need to be, and Aphelios just can't dish out the damage because they can't get in range without getting blown up from Hui and Caitlyn.
This is the time for Syndicate Coke to bury their opponents. They have Baron in a 5k gold lead. The fights have been going their way. Let's see how well this team can play with a lead. And I think I've forgotten about the factor, which is the ornaments that have been coming through. Take a look. It's the Shadow Flame, the Sundered Sky, Heartsteel, and Infinity Edge that have all been upgraded. A level 16 Ornn. And so that is a whole bunch of extra stats that they have that aren't really going to be reflected inside of the gold lead that Syndicate Coke has accrued now. So how much can they get from this Baron? I would hope to see from them at least an inhibitor cracked. And these tier 2s are vulnerable. It looks like they're putting the majority of their attention to the top side. And Tilt Esports, if you lose one more fight, this could mean the end of your game. So something might give here, in this top lane siege. As we'll see how it goes down. It looks like a fight might be breaking out here as Collins is run straight into the damage of the Hui. Retail Row has been hit with the death sentence. Remember, no flash here. Can they get a reset for their Viego? With the hostile takeover is really good, and Chris can't find the damage, has to flash away from this one, but the Aphelios will pick it up on the backside. Mist has gone a lot really far forward here, down to about 10% HP. KTL flashes forward, and that's a triple kill for KTL. This is massive. They've funneled into this powerhouse, which is the Aphelios, and he's going to put them to sleep. 4-0 now, the breath of life they needed.
That was beautiful. They drew them into a fight, and then yes, you lost Kakalin on a awkward bait because nobody was in position yet. But as soon as they were in position and the overstep, and it wasn't even a massive overstep, right? It was a very slight overstep that TES was able to punish with the flash forward from KTL. A beautifully placed ultimate that allowed them to catch out Mist as they were running away, along with Solo Mason and Retail Row, the three carries of the composition. Because Frozen Spuds, when they used the hostile takeover, I think it only caught one member. They used it prematurely, and it really didn't get the effectiveness that you need out of an ultimate like that to really make it game-changing. Because I think if it hits more than just Kakalin, that the game's over, because they're going to be attacking each other and you can just layer onto that damage. There's not much that they're going to be able to do. Instead, because they used it early, they piled into a fight that they thought they could win because they were winning all the others. There's a glimmer of hope for TES. I won't say that they're back into this game. They have a very long way to go, as sole point for Syndicate Coke is on the table for them in just a minute 45 seconds. They're going to take this bottom in tier 2, and it's going to be only inhib turrets left. There's still quite a bit of league left to play, but it can end in the drop of a hat if TES is not careful.
Well, there's going to be Hui's ultimate committed at that inhibitor tower. Critically, it was the inhibitor towers that were saved from Tilt Esports, win that Baron, thanks to KTL's heroics in that previous fight. The siege will continue. We have a minute 15 on the potential soul here for Syndicate Coke, like you mentioned. And is the defense going to come through on this bot lane inhibitor tower? That's a nice death sentence to bring forth the spot in. The flame will actually cancel the searing charge, so this is good damage onto the Orange here, chunked down to 60%. And pay attention to KTL now. They need to contest this next dragon, but Infinity Edge, LDR, and Collector completed. This is the holy grail here for Aphelios at the moment. And so you're pretty happy with these with these item combinations. And they're having a hard time sieging. There is good siege, though, from the side of Syndicate Coke with the Hui, with the Caitlyn traps. They're going to eventually siege down this tower. And now, coming up in 40 seconds, is going to be that Drake fight, and this is really where we're going to see the game come to its critical mass, I believe.
Yeah, it's going to have to come down to this soul fight. As TES, you don't want to give over soul here. It's something that you need to fight for, as if you give this over, you're just giving over an even bigger stat stick to the likes of the Caitlyn, of the Hui, and they're already hitting like a freight truck. And it's going to be very, very difficult for them. As Chris is a little bit off on the side. I did not like that positioning. It was good of them to get out of there, but the fight's about to break off.
As that's a huge searing charge. It's going to knock up 2, but look at that shockwave from Zed. It's incredible. But Zed might just be falling here to the Ornn. The shields are actually good to keep himself alive. Weatherneck has been able to assassinate the Hui on the backside of the fight. Pay attention to KTL. Red gun, blue gun in hand. What can he do here to the Ornn that is so tanky in the front line? Kakalin's applying a lot of peel here, but this Ornn is soaking it all up. Can't get any shots off onto the Caitlyn, but look at that ricochet through the wave. That does so much damage. Fourth, the spot is caught out here as well. The Flay is going to cancel the searing charge. Gonna have to flash over the wall to safety, and it is Tilt Esports fighting back here. They do not want to go out lightly. They want to deny the soul away from Syndicate Coke, and that might just be exactly what they do here. Fourth, the spot has teleport, but the Drake is going down. This will be their denial.
And I mean, what a fight. I mean, just once again, the overstep by Syndicate Coke, punished by TES, allows them to now set themselves up for Soul Point, elongate the game another 5 or so minutes, as Baron's going to be up in 5 seconds. If you're TES, I wouldn't mind giving this up. Yes, you're winning these fights, but they're close, and it's not a fight you have to take. you can sit back and wave clear the waves, so you don't have to the Baroned up wave, so you don't have to worry about potentially losing this fight. You could send Chris in for a smite steal of sorts, but I don't think it's necessary. You have everything at your disposal to clear these waves, and you've been doing it so far very nicely. It's really just going to be up to the kind of fights that you take at this point. I think that the soul is going to be a lot more important than this Baron, because you can easily get these waves pushed out.
Flash forward from Chris. They want Solo Mason. Does not have Flash. Heartbreaker used to close the gap, but Chris, you've gone too far forward. This Caitlyn's going to take your head off with the headshots, but fortunately the Lantern will save him. Hostile Takeover should not get much value. It's going to land here onto Zed, who does not have Flash. The Searing Charge will connect. That should spell the doom here for the Orianna. It was too big of a snap engage. It's now 5 versus 4 here. Icefire, they will definitely be able to leverage the Baron off this, and I think that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I don't know what that play was at all. Chris was looking for the head of Solo Mason, but instead they found Fourth Espada with the stun. I think if you land the stun, maybe something happens, but you have to remember, you have to play in range of Zed and the range of the ball, because you're the primary ball delivery system as Viego to get into those fights and get that massive shockwave. And if that can't happen, you're really missing out on a huge portion of your team fight ability. Weatherneck can be a ball delivery system, but they're coming in from a flank angle more than likely, so you're not going to have the time to set that up unless you're also on that flank angle. So for Chris to go too far, not allow that shockwave to come off, because I think if they have the ball on them, they get on top, they get the shockwave off, I think that looks like a much different fight. You just have to play in the ranges of your teammates, and it has to be a lot better communicated about when you're going to make these snap engages, because no one was prepared for that.
I couldn't agree more with you on that assessment there. It was way too far forward. You want to play with KTL, you want to play with your Orianna. Fourth Espada is going to brute force this mid lane inhibitor tower down. The inhibitor is going to follow, and TES, they are happy to give this away. KTL is very strong. You want to be able to have the same sort of situation in the previous fight when the triple kill went over to KTL, where Mist and Fourth Espada are overextending and Retail Row can't quite follow up. Solo Mason can't quite follow up. You need to play towards these carries, but right now they can't find a fight that they want to take. They're losing their inhibitors. They're losing a ton of pressure, and a minute 45 time, that is going to be a huge detriment to them when this soul fight comes up and they have super minions that are pushing into their base. But you talk about ball delivery system, that is about as good as it gets, but is it going to be enough for Tilt Esports as the health bars are dropping low? It won't. An anticlimactic ending to such an excellent start to the fight for them, but their game one spells defeat, and Syndicate Coke, they have what it takes to win in this first game. The Nexus will fall. What a game here to open up this series.
And it came down to the Renata hostile takeover. It landed on 4 of the 5 members in that last fight, and you could see what kind of plays can happen from a good hostile takeover, because it looked so good for TES to start that off. A massive shockwave, a lot of damage being thrown in over the top from the Aphelios, from Chris. It just wasn't enough, because as soon as that hostile takeover came out, the damage stopped, it all went on to the other team, and you were able to turn that fight, and everybody was blown up because that only dropping Retail Row. What a fight, what a way to end this first game for Syndicate Coke as they take a 1-0 lead over TES.
And with how close this game was, I do believe we are in for quite the close series, whether it's a 2-0 with another near 40-minute banger like we just had, or if Tilt Esports World Ender are able to respond in game 2 to bring us to game 3. I'm excited to see what this actually has in store for us in the next upcoming games. I really like the play from KTL, but it just wasn't enough there. The front line was a little too weak. I really like the way that Fourth Espada played in this top lane as well. He had the theoretical counter pick against him, right? It was Weatherneck piloting that Camille into Ornn, which is stylistically a nice matchup for the Camille, but stayed in control for the most part, was constantly winning in the 1v1. And the rest of the team, even though the bot lane like Solo Mason and Frozen Spuds, they had that rough patch in the early game. They weathered the course, they stayed on track, and with their mid-game successes, they were able to bring themselves back and fight their way through to a hard-fought Game 1 victory. So there was a lot of standout performances for me, but who stands out to you in that Game 1 performance there for Syndicate Coke as a final sort of message before we cut to break?
I think it has to go to Mist. I think Mist just played really, really well in that early game. They focused the grubs. They understood that, yes, Caitlyn might go down a little bit early. We understand that's going to happen, but as long as we keep Fourth Espada in a good position, as long as we keep Retail Row in a good position, it's going to be very hard for TES to really come back and not even come back, but to take a lead and win the game in the latter stages of it. And they executed on a game plan that I wasn't sure on. I'll be honest. Like they showed me I was wrong on that, and ProComs called it, but it was closer than I think that they wanted. And I think Mist really stepped up in that early game to make sure that they had the standing that they need to through that early game to pressure in the mid and late to finally end the game.
And with that being said, now that the Game 1 has concluded here, we still have at least one more battle between these two teams to go through. And that's going to mean that we are going to cut to a break here. Might stick onto the victory screen for a little bit longer, but nonetheless, we will cut to a break. And then when we come back, that is myself and Icefire, we will be bringing you game number 2 between these two squads. So don't go anywhere. Hold on tight. We still have quite the banger game to bring you coming up next. because it's now or never for them. The death sentence will go wide. Here comes the mini wave that's going to shuffle in. The inhibitor has respawned in the mid lane, but will be immediately dropped once again by Retail Row. The bottom lane inhibitor will likely follow suit. And it was the exact same situation that we were in just a couple minutes ago here, Icefire, although this time it's Baron for Syndicate Coke. And I do believe that this time around, with that extra buff, they should be able to successfully pull off this siege. It's about to break down. I'm ready for it to happen.
Ooh.
There is the cleanse from KTL as Chris is here taking up in the front line for the squad, but the engage is in. Look at that Magnet Storm. It is absolutely massive, but where is the follow-up here from Syndicate Co? Can Solo Mason do enough damage? Retail Row is taken down Zed to start the fight off, and it will continue. Health bars are so very low, but Weathernet can't deal the damage in the front lane. This should just be the end of the game for Syndicate Coke as Colin will drop. Now the 80 carry will follow. That Aphelios is down. It is Chris who is left alive only to watch the remainders of his Nexus towers fall, the remainder of his team's undefeated series streak drop, and it will be the undefeated game record maintained for Syndicate Coke here in the Titan Conqueror League.